Hey guys, I'm back, this time with a video that I've been thinking about for a long time, brainstorming, structuring in my mind for it to be as useful and as wide, all-encompassing as possible so that no matter what your symptoms are, you may be able to find some pieces to relate to. This video that I want to do is to do a video about what it's like to live with MS. And rather than focusing on the individual symptoms, which are different for every single one of us, we're all snowflakes floating in the air, I want to shift it to a more existential perspective and, as attributes, as qualities, as shortcomings that MS might confront us to. In order to do so, I have thought of a structure in points, 5 different sections. So here goes section number 1. In this section number 1, I want to talk about the uncertainty and acceptance that MS forces us to have. We are forced to live in a pretty high degree of uncertainty. We never know what's coming next. Who does anyway? But we don't know what our body will do to us, our body, the one that we are in, the one that we are. And then with the acceptance, you also have to accept that there are things that you're not able to do anymore. Things that you were once able to do, such as, running a marathon, for example. You're not able to do that. I was never a big runner, but all of a sudden I'm like, hey, but what if I felt like running? Well, I can't. And this also means that you have to keep accepting new versions of yourself. If you once were a runner, all of a sudden you're not a runner anymore, but you're still you. So it's an attribute, it's a quality, but it's also a very frustrating one. It's tough to saying goodbye and saying hello to new versions of yourself. And another small detail of living with MS is that you have to accept that you're not going to have a quiet night again. Those beautiful nights that you had as a teenager of sleeping for maybe 10 hours uninterrupted, that's just a distant memory to me. It's been a long, long time that I haven't slept without waking up at least 2 or 3 times per night. If I showed you my Fitbit stats, you would understand what I mean. It's peak after peak after peak for some reason. Whether it be spasms, whether it be because I wake up in the night, whether it be, emotional turmoil caused by this uncertainty. From here onto point number 2 is that you also, and let's shift it to a more positive perspective, you also keep discovering new versions of yourself. And by that, I don't only mean that all of a sudden you're a person who doesn't run marathons anymore. I mean that all of a sudden you realize that you're much braver than you thought you were. I, for one, thought that I didn't have the courage, I didn't have the strength to confront things that life would throw at me until it happened. And I had no choice but to stand strong and carry on. And carry on living the day, because it becomes an instant realization that you don't know what's coming tomorrow, so it's today that you have to live. You learn to go for what you really want. You learn to push aside things that you don't really need, things that you don't really want, and focus on what it is that you need. And using a futile, mundane example such as going to events, when before you would have gone to an event, to a night event, to a meeting with friends that you didn't really feel like going to, now you learn to, push those things aside and focus on what it is that you really want, because you know that this event will drain you from your energy. So you end up asking yourself, was it really worth it? And all these attributes put together makes of us, MS warriors, more of warriors. We just have this, very, very determined attitude. We are strong. We go for what we want. We are self-assured in some aspects. Can't say that all the aspects. but it's a tough training, but ultimately this is the point that we hopefully will reach. On to point number 3, is that despite being this awesome warrior, you also learn to be a little bit more humble. And why is that? Why do you learn to be more humble? Well, you learn to be more humble because you learn to ask for help, whereas before that may have been, a little bit embarrassing, a little bit annoying that you have to ask other people to do things for you. Now you just accept that. For example, bringing a cup of coffee to the living room, to me is a pretty bumpy ride, so I will probably end up spilling the coffee. I accept that I have to ask someone else to do that for me, and I do that with a smile. Just as much you learn to accept for other people offering you help as a kind gesture and not as feeling like this person is offering their help because they don't consider you good enough to do those things. And this also teaches you to set healthy boundaries for yourself. Setting boundaries in respect to what you cannot do. You accept that bringing a cup of coffee is not your forte, so you're going to ask someone else to do that for you. And setting boundaries, again, going back to the point before, of not doing things that are not necessary for your well-being, such as going to an event that you didn't feel like going to, which is ultimately a pretty positive thing, I think. I've wasted a lot of time going to stuff that really wasn't necessary. And this eventually leads to point number 4, which teaches you to practice more self-love. By that I mean that you learn to live a healthier life, leading a healthier lifestyle, healthier food, cutting back on all the crap. Once again, using the example of the event, things that are unnecessary to you, you just set them aside and focus on what's good for you. Preparing to welcome the unexpected is also a way of practicing self-love, that whatever comes at you, whatever new version of you comes out, you will learn to love this person because you have to, because this is what you have. You are what you have. And also, this is a beautiful thing, that all of a sudden you experience gratitude on a much smaller scale. For the small things, you get like these little sparkles of gratitude throughout the day for achieving small things which before would have been taken for granted. Again, using the example of the coffee. If you bring the coffee to the living room on your own, you're like, whoa, I did this on my own. I'm awesome. And gratitude is a beautiful thing to experience. So instead of looking at it as something silly, instead of thinking that it's something that of course you're able to do, you learn to embrace these things and to appreciate them. And on to point number 5, on a more lighthearted level, is that you also learn to, you have to be prepared to apologize a lot. And why is that? Well, because you end up bumping into people a lot. You might end up knocking things over. That cup of coffee that I'm talking about, maybe you have a spasm while you're drinking it and you end up spilling it on the rug. So then comes the profuse apologizing. You also have to learn to apologize because of mood swings. And I'm one to testify for that. I do suffer from mood swings. And I end up myself losing control over my mood out of the blue for no particular reason. And I just have to accept that, hey, well, that was my mistake. I'm terribly sorry. I will try to improve. And again, using the example of the events, you have to be prepared to apologize because you're not going to these events. And hey, apologizing is a virtue. There's many people who are not able to even say sorry. That makes you awesome. And that's pretty much it for my existential review of what it's like to live with MS. I hope this at least helped you crack a smile. And whether you're a veteran MSer, whether you're a newly diagnosed person with MS, I hope this gave you an idea or confirmed ideas that you had of what it was like to live with MS. That's it for me. Thank you for watching, and please, everyone, I encourage you to please leave comments and contribute with what you think I've missed, with what you think it's like to live with MS, whether it be negative, positive, empowering, whatever you want. I'm curious to read your perspective on it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you soon. Take care.